What if events went differently, and instead of chasing gym badges and Pokemon dreams, Ash Ketchum woke up in a cold concrete dorm, stripped of his Pokeballs and surrounded by desperate strangers in a game where loss means death. Welcome back, fellow watchers of the multiverse. My name is Max Charlebois, aka MissedThePart, and today's survival style crossover was in a live stream. It was a big fan request, and this one wasn't just picked by just one person. It was born from the energy of all of you in the chat, so here's a massive community shout out to everyone who showed up and shapes the multiverse with us. In this twisted reality, Ash enters the Squid Game not as a trainer but as a player, forced to rely on instinct, heart, and determination without Pikachu at his side. Childhood games turn deadly, trust becomes a weapon, and Ash must learn that this tournament, friendship won't save you. The stakes are high and the prizes isn't a championship, it's survival. And if you got a what if, or if you got a crazy bold idea, just like this one, join the monthly Watcher tier, the Watcher 5 tier, or consider joining the Watcher of the Multiverse tier here on the YouTube community page. If you click that big red join button, I would highly recommend to do so because our community is building something amazing. We have more videos, more crossovers, and more chaos, and it's coming soon, so be a part of it, pitch your timeline, and watch it unfold here directly on the YouTube channel. But that being said, the games are about to begin, and only one can win. This is What If Ash was in Squid Game. The invitation came, wrapped in mystery. A glossy card promising opportunity and escape. Ash Ketchum, now a streetwise youth, without his ever-faithful Pikachu, or the fantastical creatures he once chased, looked at it with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Growing up in a rough neighborhood with little to no prospects, this invitation for an overseas training scholarship seemed like a beacon of hope. The catch was vague: participate in a series of challenges and prove your worth. What the letter didn't say was that the training would be unlike anything Ash had ever faced. Stepping off the plane, Ash was greeted by a cold, sterile building far from the vibrant world he knew. The dormitory was sparse and impersonal, filled with strangers whose eyes told stories of desperation and guarded hope. The gravity of the situation weighed down on him immediately, but the flicker of determination in his heart refused to be snuffed out. He had faced challenges before. Not monsters or gym battles, but life itself. Here, he was going to fight for survival. The first game was Red Light, Green Light, an eerie throwback to childhood play turned deadly serious. A giant robotic doll stood at the end of a wide field, its eyes scanning every movement. When it turned, anyone caught moving faced instant elimination. Ash's heart raced, but he steadied his breathing, drawing on the battle instincts honed through years of training and adventure. He remembered how in battles, timing and reflexes were everything. When the doll's voice echoed green light, Ash sprinted forward, light on his feet, but the moment the words shifted to red light, he froze mid-stride, like a statue carved from determination. Each pause, each burst of speed brought him closer to the finish line. He edged past the other contestants, some of whom stumbled, others frozen in fear. But Ash pressed on with quiet focus. When he crossed the line, a flicker of triumph warmed him, but the silence after the game was heavy, with the absence of those who hadn't made it. In the dormitory afterward, Ash found himself drawn to a small group of survivors. Among them was a former friend who'd gambled his way through life, a veteran gambler hardened by loss, and a few others who carried scars both visible and hidden. Ash's natural optimism clashed with their cynicism, but he wasn't deterred. He began sharing his own experiences, not of monsters or epic battles, but of survival, hope, and the importance of knowing one's strengths and weaknesses. He taught them about type advantages, a concept from his old world that felt oddly applicable here. Just like how fire beats grass, water beats fire. Each game had its quirks and vulnerabilities. The patterns in the Dalgona Candy Challenge, the odd-numbered marbles, the timing of the glass bridge steps. Ash encouraged his new friends to think differently, to analyze rather than panic. His training was unorthodox for this environment, but it brought new life to the group. Days turned into weeks, and Ash's small team began to trust each other, forging bonds in a place designed to break them. They watched each other's backs in the games, shared stories at night, and even sang quietly when hope felt too fragile to hold alone. Ash found himself softly humming his old theme song, his battle anthem, reminding himself and others that even in darkness, the spark of light could never be fully extinguished. But the cost was heavy. With each victory came the mournful knowledge of those who didn't survive. Ash carried this weight silently, the ghosts of fallen players haunting his dreams. The bright-eyed kid who once chased dreams of becoming a Pokémon master now wrestled with the cruel realities of a game where lives were tokens and every choice could mean death. The marble game was a turning point. Ash found himself paired against a stoic woman whose quiet despair masked a sharp mind. The stakes were high, and Ash's usual quick tactics weren't enough against her careful calculation. He recalled his training. Sometimes patience was the greatest weapon. He slowed his breathing, observing her movements like a battle of wits rather than speed. When the moment came, he feigned hesitation, luring her into a false sense of control before striking decisively. Victory came not from brute strength, but from understanding the nuances of the fight. Between games, Ash noticed the ever-watchful eyes of the game's organizers, masked figures whose presence was a constant reminder of the stakes. Rumors circulated about the true nature of the tournament, the twisted entertainment for powerful VIPs who watched from their towers. The more Ash learned, the more resolve hardened inside him. This was not just a game to win, it was a corruption to be exposed. As dawn broke over the shattered remnants of the Squid Game compound, Ash stood quietly among the survivors, their faces etched with exhaustion and disbelief. The chaos had settled into a fragile calm, but the heavy weight of what they'd endured lingered like a shadow stretching across the horizon. Ash felt it keenly, the knowledge that freedom was just the first step in a longer journey. The survivors gathered in a crumbling warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a temporary sanctuary. Ash scanned their faces, seeing more than just weary strangers. These were people who had been broken and rebuilt in the crucible of a nightmare. Their stories echoed the same grim refrain, yet the faint flicker of hope that Ash had ignited burned steadily. He found himself reflecting on the strange twists that had led him here. No Pokémon at his side, no fantastical powers, only his own wits and will. It was strange to be stripped of what he had once thought essential to his identity. But in this brutal new world, he had found something deeper. Resilience born from pure humanity. The veteran gambler, still clutching a worn deck of cards, approached Ash quietly. There were no words at first, only a nod of gratitude, an unspoken acknowledgement of the battles fought and won. Then the gambler spoke, his voice hoarse but steady, about the fragments of information they had gathered during their time inside. The Squid Game wasn't just some isolated event. It was a sprawling network, a shadow empire hidden beneath layers of corporate and political facades. The game was a symptom of a larger sickness, one that thrived on human desperation and silence. Ash's eyes narrowed, his mind already racing through possibilities. If the game's organizers could be brought into the light, dismantled piece by piece, maybe the survivors' suffering wouldn't be in vain. It was a dangerous path, but Ash's instincts told him that the only way forward was to fight beyond the arena. That evening, the group worked to coordinate their next moves. They would reach out to journalists, activists, and any allies willing to expose the truth. Ash volunteered to speak. His voice was familiar, a symbol from a different world who had survived the impossible. It was important that the story be told through the eyes of someone who still believed in hope, even when the odds were stacked against them. The former friend, now quieter but still loyal, shared his own story, a stark reminder of the cost of silence. He had once been complicit, caught in the web of debts and lies that led many into the games. Now he wanted to make amends, to turn the tide from destruction to redemption. Ash listened without judgment. He understood that no one emerged unscathed from such darkness, but every step toward the light mattered. They began mapping out the network's known locations, gathering data from hacked devices and whispered rumors. The road ahead would be perilous, but Ash's calm determination inspired the others. Days turned into weeks, and the survivors became something like a family forged by fire. Ash's leadership style was quiet, but effective. He didn't command with force, but with trust, encouraging others to find their own strengths. The veteran gambler, for instance, found a new purpose in gathering intelligence, while the former friend used his contacts to uncover hidden facilities. Ash himself trained relentlessly, not in battle moves or Pokémon techniques, but in strategy, negotiation, and resilience. He studied the psychology of control and power, understanding the importance of alliances and timing. His old training as a Pokémon trainer, teaching patience, observation, and respect for strength, translated surprisingly well into this new world. One night, as Ash sat beneath a broken street lamp, the city's distant lights flickering like dying stars, he thought about the cost of hope. It was a fragile thing, easily shattered by betrayal or fear. But hope was also a flame that refused to die, burning brightest when the night was darkest. It was that flame he would carry, not just for himself, but for every survivor who dared to dream of a better world. The survivors' plan took shape: to infiltrate the network's communications hub and release a flood of evidence exposing the Squid Game's inner workings. It was a high-stakes gambit, relying on stealth, timing, and trust. Ash prepared for the mission, as he would a gym battle, studying every variable, anticipating every opponent's move. As the night of the infiltration arrived, tension hung thick in the air. The survivors moved like shadows, slipping through back alleys and abandoned buildings. Ash led the way, every step measured, every breath controlled. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from a fierce resolve. Inside the communications hub, the team faced their greatest challenge: armed guards, security drones, and a labyrinth of encrypted systems stood between them and their goal. But Ash's team was united by something stronger than technology or muscle. It was trust, forged in shared struggle. The hacker among them worked feverishly, fingers flying across the keyboard as Ash and others held back the guards with improvised tactics. Ash himself moved with precision, intercepting threats and guiding the team through tight corridors. It felt like a battle fought with both mind and body, every second a test of endurance. Finally, The evidence was uploaded, a torrent of video, documents, and financial records exposing the monstrous web of greed and cruelty behind the games. The broadcast rippled across networks, igniting outrage and demands for justice worldwide. But victory came with a cost. The alarms blared, and the team had to fight their way out. Their escape narrow and fraught. Ash found himself face to face with one of the highest ranking enforcers, a cold, ruthless figure who embodied the system they fought against. The confrontation was brutal but brief. Ash's speed and quick thinking outmatched brute force, and the enforcer fell. But the encounter left Ash shaken. He realized that dismantling such a vast network meant facing not just physical foes, but the insidious corruption embedded in society's foundations. Back in their hideout, as the sun rose again, the survivors watched the world react to the revelations. Governments were forced to investigate. Protests erupted. The Shadow Empire began to crumble. Ash's broadcast had ignited a fire that could not be easily extinguished. Yet Ash knew the fight was far from over. There were always new threats, new shadows lurking in the cracks. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Against all odds, he had survived. Not as a legendary trainer with a Thunderbolt companion, but as a human who refused to give in. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ash's resolve was unwavering. Wherever darkness thrived, wherever people suffered in silence, he would be there. Not with flashy moves or mystical powers, but with the enduring strength of hope, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. And that is going to be it for What If Ash Ketchum was in Squid Game. Now, what did you think of this particular what if scenario? It takes Ash and it plucks him out of the Pokemon universe and puts him into Squid Game, and we queue it and see what would happen. So it's absolutely crazy. This idea came from one of our live streams, and again, I want to give the community here a massive shout out. Thank you very much. And for those who have become a watcher of the multiverse here on the YouTube channel, we have tons of more videos coming soon. So again, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. I want to give a massive community shout out to all of our YouTube members only. We have about almost 100 right now, and I can't thank you guys enough. And also for those who are supporting me here on Patreon, it really does mean a lot to me. So again, thank you guys so very much. It just really means a lot. But that being said, I will see you in the next What If episode. Take care and have a fantastic day. Peace out.